Back to the situation in Ukraine, the U.S., NATO, and now Justin to CNN, Great Britain all say more Russian troops have crossed into the border into eastern Ukraine. More sanctions could be on the table. But what about military action? We'll talk to retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling about that, about strategy moving ahead, how to stop them. Next. Got a new development here. This just into us here at CNN. A British government source telling us that Russia has moved between 4,000 and 5,000 troops in formed units into eastern Ukraine. So that's new, 4,000 to 5,000. Also, the source adds Britain believes Russia has approximately 20,000 troops deployed on the Russian side of the border, and more may be on the way. NATO says these images right here show Russian tanks and artillery units that were already there moving around eastern Ukraine. Just a couple hours ago, the White House slammed Russia's continuous denials of interference.
As the Russian military has fired on Ukrainian military positions, as the Russian military has even put boots on the ground in Ukraine. We have regularly marshaled evidence to indicate what exactly is happening, despite the protestations of the Russian government that for some reason would have us all believe otherwise. The fact is those denials are completely without any credibility, and we've been pretty candid about that, I think.
And listening to the president speaking yesterday afternoon, he stopped short of calling what Russia is doing an invasion. Instead, President Obama labeled the Kremlin's moves as an incursion. President basically ruling out any U.S. military action. So let's talk military, though, with our CNN military analyst, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. And so, General, let's just begin actually with the news just into us from, Britain saying 4,000 to 5,000. So that's up a couple thousand troops. Inside, Russian troops inside of Ukraine, and knowing, 20,000 or so have amassed just on the other side of the border in Russia. Just reading into that militarily, how does that strike you?
Well, that tells me there's a couple of divisions on the border. That's pretty critical. When you talk about 4,000 to 5,000, the size of that element is probably a reinforced regiment or a tank regiment with some artillery. That's pretty significant. This is, you can call it an incursion or an invasion. What it is basically going into the sovereign territory of Ukraine and trying to create chaos.
Can I just, on semantics, incursion, invasion, what's the difference?
Well, I think the invasion piece is a Russian attempt to bring their political will against another country. An incursion is where they're using their force to basically influence another country. And it's semantics, Brooke. I'd call it an invasion. It meets the pure definition of an invasion.
Okay. I want you to listen to something. I had a guest on the show yesterday. His name's Ben Judah, wrote a whole book on Vladimir Putin. And he was talking to me, and he said that Putin has struck fear, in the hearts and minds of Russians, and that Ukraine, he has taught them through propaganda and whatnot, is evil. But now, my guest said Putin is stuck. Take a listen. Why can't he just stop, Ben? Why can't he stop? Heaven forbid Vladimir Putin would say I'm wrong and cease what he began there in Ukraine. But what's wrong with that?
Because Nazi Ukraine, as Putin has framed it for the Russian people, was starting to win. And it looked like Putin's rebels were going to lose Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, Vladimir Putin can't lose those two cities to the Nazi party, can he? So that's why he has to react. He's trapped by his propaganda.
So then, General, he went on to say that Putin now finds himself stuck. He's compelled to support this rebellion, even at the cost of, a full collapse in relations with the West, even with a full-scale war. Do you agree?
Here's what I would say, Brooke. This is something that Mr. Putin can't afford. He cannot afford to lose. He was being beat in the two provinces where he was attempting to cause chaos against the Ukrainian military. Now he's trying to create another front against the Ukrainian military and maybe create a land bridge through Mariupol into the Crimea. He cannot go back to his people and say, I lost against an inferior force.
Lose what? Do we even really know what he's trying to win? We can guess.
Well, he's trying to influence the Europeans. And it won't stop just with Ukraine. This will continue on into some other areas. I think the Baltic nations are very concerned about this. Georgia is concerned about this. Moldova, where Russia has already acted in several ways. This is something where he is trying to counter the influence of the West, and he can't afford to lose in Ukraine.
Okay, so then what? How do you stop him? I mean, if the president's talking about possible additional sanctions, General, can you hear me? Oh, we lost him. Darn it! I hate when that happens. General Mark Hertling, thank you so much.